Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent. I'm the host. And today I have Michael Chapman joining me on the show. It's such a great pleasure having a great advocate joining me. And we're going to be talking, about housing. We're going to be talking about clawbacks. And we're going to be talking about autonomy relationships, not autonomous, autonomy.
Marriage equity.
Yes, and that's a huge topic that, we'll get Michael to talk more about it. It's a lot of issues going on regarding that and all the three topics and so many more topics. If we have time, we'll dive into some more topics regarding for housing. That's going to be one of the great focuses that we'll be talking about. Regarding income inequality to afford the housing, as we all know, we have a housing crisis in Canada. And is there a solution to it? We'll dive into that, and we're going to talk regarding clawbacks. Now, I'm
my favorite topic.
Yeah, exactly. And
pink unicorns.
There's no need for clawbacks in Canada or anywhere in the world. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brent. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. I think that everything you just said is just so important, and I think the more we can talk about what's happening for people living with disabilities, and the more we can advocate for them, it's going to make it better for everyone. And I think that's what we have to really focus on, is that we're building community. We're not actually. It's not one side gets something and the other side doesn't, or one side gets something at the expense of the other side. We're floating all boats, right? A rising tide floats all boats. And that someone said that line, I'm not sure who it was. It definitely wasn't mine. And that's what I look at it. And I think so many different aspects of being disabled and being poor in this country are just ridiculous, because it could be solved with government support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting, Alexa, the way you framed it, because I know, Brent, you always say that there's certain things that the government seems to like to pit disabled people up against disabled people, especially when it comes to housing affordability, right? It's like, well, you get the subsidy and you don't. You get to pay market rent.
You don't get to have it.
And it's just like, all these policies. And it's like they want to have infighting amongst the disabled. It's like, let's get everybody pissed off and fighting amongst one another. And it's not really fair. It's not fair policy when you have some getting subsidies and some not. And you have 10-year waiting lists for the BC housing stock. It's just crazy.
Oh, at least 10 years. And that's the issue, Neil and Michael, is that. I'm glad you mentioned that, Neil, is about the pinning disabled against disabled. Like, you can have subsidized housing, you get to pay more high market rent. Well, maybe a person's happy where they're living, but they're not happy paying high market rent. Oh, but I want to be in subsidized housing. Well, you got to be freaking homeless in order to get any, or your house has been sold, or you're condemned, or anything. There's so many topics or reasons why.
And even something really simple like the bus pass. It's another example of them pitting against, they're saying, well, you can get a bus pass, but then you won't be able to afford food, or you can afford food, but then you don't get a bus pass. It's just crazy.
Here's $52, but you go and take a taxi and you go to a food bank and go get your food or your grocery store. but now you got
Yeah.
no transportation for the rest of
No,
the month.
and it's so unfair the way they subsidize. They'll give you a $6,000 to buy your new Tesla, but they won't give you a free bus pass. And if they really cared about the environment and getting people out of their cars, the buses and transit would be free.
Oh, for
It's
sure.
the cheapest
there's-
solution to greening the transportation economy. And it's
Mhm.
ridiculous that they're bickering about, like, make it free. Because
Yeah.
the only people who are going to benefit from free transportation are the people who can't afford transportation. And those are the people that need the most help.
Mhm.
Well, I know in Metro Vancouver there was a campaign going on. It's called All on Board, and there now there's a group that's advocating about making transit free for children 12 and under. Now there's a push to get it up to 18 years of age because they want them to get used to taking transit.
Well, yeah,
Well,
you make it
no.
all free. It's ridiculous, and then you wouldn't need $80,000 a year cops transit looking for transit fares. Like all that would just remove this whole layer of criminality. Everywhere you turn when you're poor, they're criminalizing it.
Yeah.
If they don't give enough money to pay rent, but if you live on the street, that's criminalized. So it's like the one that I like to talk about when it comes to housing affordability is right now in BC, if you're on benefit, which is social assistance or disability, it's $375 for housing, which is absurd. But if you want to know what a proper government benefit looks, just look at the other side of the building where those checks are coming from, and they're paying themselves. The members of the Legislative Assembly who set the rate are paying themselves about $2,500 a month. Oh, and we're picking up their cell phone bill, and we're giving them a food allowance, and it goes on and on. And these are people pulling in $175,000 as a salary to begin with for 10 weeks of work. I'm sorry, sessions. They're pretty vigorous.
Yeah.
It's so unfair, and it's like that's why I got to laugh because what else can I do? I think what we should do is we should have a trip camp and move everyone just on the lawns of the Legislative Assembly and say we looked, couldn't find anything, even with your increased rent of $500. So here we are with our medical devices, with our meds, with our aids, and you want to arrest us and kick us out? Go ahead, but we're a lot more complicated to move around and to arrest than the average Joe. And there's the only time I could see being disabled having an advantage, because who wants to deal with a wheelchair and a catheter bag?
There's that movie, and I think it's still on Netflix,
Crip Cap,
called
brilliant.
Crip Cap. And
Yeah,
it was
that's
really,
that's
really
where I stole
good.
the name
Actually.
from. It's about the American movement
Mhm.
to get the Persons with Disability Act passed in the States in the 70s. And it
Yeah.
was because of the in-your-face effort of people with disabilities that laws were made. And so I'm sitting here back and waiting passively. Here we are, right? I've been on that BC registry for 7 years. I've
Wow.
never had my phone ring, not once. I actually found a building with empty units in it. A building my grandparents had lived in 40 years ago.
Hmm.
Oh my
A
God.
beautiful building. And what happened when I found empty units and asked BC Housing what was up? They phoned the police on me.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Like outrageous. And then I did a freedom of information to get their surveillance video because they accused me of harassing workers. I didn't harass anyone. I asked the woman a question. Thank God I audio recorded it because they sent these videos to my request. It was completely the wrong day. And then I said, well, it was the wrong day. Could I have the right one? They said, sorry, we only keep video for 30 days. They're so corrupted, right?
Well, and I've shared this story before, Brent, about
Yeah.
the one client that I helped in the with the employment program that we did
Hmm.
for Sam Sullivan Foundation.
Right. I remember.
And this is just one example, but the guy I was helping, he lived in BC Housing, and he had a guy a next door neighbor that was threatening to kill him like daily, like every day, saying, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you." And of course, I mean, that's gonna, that's gonna fray some nerves, right? So he went to BC Housing and said, I have this guy that's threatening to kill me all the time, and I want to move. And they said, well, sure, we'll let you move this one time, but if we have to move you again, you're kicked off the system, right? So they moved him. And this, so-called new place that they moved him to, had really bad smelly carpets. The landlord was a jerk. He wasn't gonna clean the carpets. So now the guy is dealing with smelly carpets. He's got insomnia because it's so bad, and he can't eat properly because he's on assistant dollars, right? And so you've got somebody that's not eating properly, not sleeping, and you expect them to be able to hold down a job or try to find a job.
No, it's
it's
the
crazy.
problem is there's hundreds and hundreds of individual cases of people living in hardship, because that's what it does.
Yeah, this
And-
is just one
Yeah,
example.
That's
Yeah,
one,
one
right? And I
example.
think that's a big issue for me, is also they give you such little amount of benefit that you have to do something that's a little bit shady, whether it's get $100 from that old auntie yours or something that it's totally fine, but most people don't realize that you're allowed to get a certain amount of money a month above and beyond what you get from the state. So everyone feels bad, so they're not complaining, they're not asking for the subsidy for food, they're not asking, and it's like we should be screaming and yelling for help because it's ridiculous. And by forcing us to live in such abject poverty, it keeps you down. It's like it's guaranteed to keep you down because you're just so grateful they get anything. But
Well,
like,
and this is my
Recently there was a posting on social media on Twitter. There was a lady who is in British Columbia, and she's been homeless for 2 weeks now. And I'm sure that that a lot of people have seen her posting. If they haven't, I'm not going to give her name out just for her. I mean, for her privacy. I mean, but it's out there. I mean, if people want to look it up, and you'll see
she's posting on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'd say she doesn't have a reasonable expectation of privacy.
So she described it as a merry-go-round. She
Yeah.
said she's homeless. The housing wait list is 2 years. I mean, 10 years plus. Okay, and so she can't find any subsidized housing because there is none. So now she's put into a shelter. They found her a shelter, temporary. She wants permanent housing, but now there's a waiting list, and so now she says you can't find work for 500. I mean, as of July
We
19th.
created there's a military industrial complex, which we learned about in the 60s. But now we've got this thing called the poverty industry complex. And it's these nonprofits, not all of them, but a lot of them, nonprofits providing housing, especially as we've seen recently with the disgrace of Etra and BC Housing, Shane Ramsey. Shame on all of them. They've created jobs. These guys are getting paid $250,000, $300,000 a year. Sorry, that's not acceptable in a nonprofit. That's not, because you're not doing rocket science. You're providing shelter. And I've stayed in a few shelters, and I'll tell you, they're shitholes. And a shelter bed costs $80,000 a year.
That's crazy.
That's what it is. And the scam is you don't even get to use that whole day. You have to get out during the day. So it's $190,000 if you wanted to get 24 hours out of that bed. But give the people that money. What is a recipient of disability gets about $14,000 a year, $15,000 a year, and they're spending $80 on a shelter bed in a dog-ridden. I was in North Van. I take pictures. I was so disgusted. It was like, come on.
And this is the problem I have with food banks too. I mean, I know there are some
food banks.
There are some
years later.
Yeah, there are some food banks that are good. I'm not going to lambaste all of them, but it would be so much better if the government would just, like you said, give the money directly to the people that need it, not prop up food banks, right?
Well, they created a whole complex industry. It's a criminal justice system. So you've got police, lawyers, judges, you've got advocates, you've got people like us that are recipients. You've got all these. They've created this whole thing, but it's so inefficient. And you look anywhere in the world that actually is working and not having housing issues and not having mental health issues developed on the street. Like the mental health is bad everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you give people assistance, there's a chance a lot of them will recover. A lot of them will stabilize. Not everyone, but the public sees the worst case on the street. Really, when you're living on that hard ass concrete on the downtown east side, that's the last stop, right? There's
Yeah.
so many other people that are underhoused or unhoused that you don't see. And they're couch surfing, car living. Like I've been living in my car off and on for 5 years.
Yeah.
And you know, because that's all I can afford. But I have a driver's license. I don't have any criminality, so I can drive. I got insurance, but just,
Mhm.
you know, and you rent a room in the winter from someone. But I just, you know, yet 2 days ago I turned 59. It's like 59 and I'm living in my car.
Well, here's the thing, Mike,
Canada.
is
I'm gonna start wearing a suit that looks like a pipeline because I know they're throwing money at that.
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
here's-
they always
here's
say
the thing.
that sorry, Brent.
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna quickly say that they always say that politicians should wear kind of NASCAR jackets, you know, with all of the
Yeah, I've got a
advertisement
picture of
on the
Mitt Romney.
jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when it comes down to how the government has the shelter and support system set up, there, you know, the previous minister, previous minister, tried to get rid of the shelter away from the system, but the government wouldn't let the policy wouldn't let them change that. He wanted to get rid of the shelter so that if here's your check, you go and you find housing, you can only afford room and board, you can only afford to pay your landlord X amount of dollars, you found a safe place to live, hey, you get your full check. Now, the way the system is still set up after decades and decades and decades, which I heard in a committee meeting, that even the current minister admitted that.
That was
It's
Mitch McConnell in states with all his branding
Yeah.
on them. Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you. Talking
No,
about picture with brand.
it's more of a mindset, you know, on how the system is set up. And so the issue on that is that they want to get rid of the shelter, right? But no minister going forward, it's like the system won't allow them to get rid of it.
Well, they're
ECF
pointing fingers like this, but we
Yeah.
know what the issue is. It's
Yeah.
in the 1970s, the federal government got out of building housing.
Yeah.
And one of the few countries that did. And this is the result. Here we are 50 years later, and it's a shit show. And there's no affordable housing. When I grew up, there was affordable housing everywhere, and they were building more and more and more. And that's
yeah.
what we have to do. The only way we're getting out of this disaster is building our way out of it. We're not going to rearrange things, tinker this, tinker that, move the benefit up $125. So now it's only 7 miles from the poverty line, not 18 miles. Like, come on, we need a systematic change, but all of this is the responsibility of governments that have let us down because they've turned housing into a commodity.
It's
So
like
I'm sorry, if you paid 40 grand for your place in the 70s, you don't get to walk away with $3.5 million and not pay any tax on it. That's not reasonable. The reason your house is so valuable is because the community that it's in, not
Mhm.
because of the house. So that
Well-
asset has to be shared. That benefit has to be shared.
Yeah,
I was
because it's
gonna-
a huge thing on the financialization, right? And it's
Yeah.
just, and right now the corporate lenders are using it as a commodity. Housing shouldn't be a commodity.
No, it has to be a protected trust because the result is if it becomes a commodity, many people are unhoused.
Yep.
You know, and I look at Vienna, Austria. I go to Vienna every time someone says, "Oh, government housing is junk." 80% of the housing in Vienna is government owned, public housing. But you could never tell because some of it costs 10,000 euros a month and some of it costs 250 euros a month.
Right.
Because they go full spectrum. Because to them, housing is it's something that's so special that if a landlord lets a place get run down, they go right in there right away and they eminent domain it. They buy the landlord out and they say, "No more. That's not how we operate in our city." Their buildings are magnificently managed. They're well kept, even the low cost ones. And it's just unbelievable. That's what happens when the government's serious about housing. But our government's not serious about it. They've all been captured by corporations.
what I was gonna say is it's like the meme, you know, the meme with the 8 Spider-Mans and all the Spider-Mans are pointing like this, you know?
Yeah.
they're
Yeah,
all doing, they're all
And they
doing this.
love the blame game, but that's not what they were elected for. They were elected to work together to find solutions. And we didn't mean find solutions how to get more money to big oil. We didn't mean find solutions how to get, whatever to do. The solutions are getting the health of Canada better, and they're not. They're causing more and more people to become destitute and to live in poverty. And when you're living in poverty, just read an article in the Tyee. Everyone should be reading the Tyee, by the way.
I do.
Best
I-
online sources for information.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
TY.ca. The life expectancy of an unhoused person is half the average Canadian. So
Wow.
shame on you, government of Canada. Like that just makes me cry. That makes me want to drop tears to think that that's how bad it's gone. And I know that, having been cold and wet and sick in a car, it's awful. And it's so frustrating because it would take so little to get everyone. But you know, they can get 4,000 people in a camp to build a pipeline pretty darn quick, eh?
Oh, yeah.
So they can get 4,000 housing units up pretty darn quick, right? So it's a shame on them. The reason that we're so far below their poverty line is because they know that we're very, very weak as we are, because so many of us don't have the energy or the ability to fight back. So they're bullies. It just shows that they're going to the very bottom and they're attacking the most indefensible because they get away with it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yep, because they're allowed to get away with it because it's the policies that they've set in place, deliberate policies, and with that, we're gonna kind of blend into clawbacks.
My
Oh.
favorite topic.
Let's talk about clawbacks. I was a federal government employee. I paid into a pension all my life.
Yeah,
And now every
Brent-
month,
Brent and
they
I were
steal
both
all
provincial
$800
employees, right?
from me.
Yeah.
For
Thank you.
what? Like, this is absolutely absurd. I mean, just because if you're just getting a provincial benefit, that's too low. I'm sorry, it's too low. It should be $2,000 minimum. If they can provide housing. If they can't provide housing, it has to be 25 for housing and then another 1,000 for living, I would say. But the whole idea that it's that they're clawing back my money, and it's
Yeah.
a fight.
Yeah, and that's been my argument too, right? Like I've said again before, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but you have the Minister of Labor that part of its job is to defend pensions basically, and make sure that the pension system is operating properly. And yet you take a pension over to the Ministry of Social Development and they abuse the shit out of it, right? It's like, oh, that pension is no longer a protected income, we'll just claw it back like a pink unicorn. It doesn't deserve to be protected anymore, and it's just crazy. So like their own government policy that says a pension is a protected income, as soon as it crosses over to another ministry, it's like, oh, you're SOL. We're gonna operate by these rules now, different rules. So
And the thing is,
unicorns, just yeah.
if I didn't have my pension clawed back, it would be about, I'd probably receive close to 2,000 a month, and that would make
same as
such
me.
a big difference from 1,300.
Well, right now the LICO formula, and kind of going back in time, the old time machine. So back at the beginning of the pandemic, right? When the Prime Minister would come up on his podium and say, well, we're going to get help out for Canadians, right? We got to get out the door. We'll figure it out later. We'll figure it all out later. Let's get the money out. $2,000. So let's just rush the money out the door. They got it out in no time at all. Wow, within days, not even a week, and both people had their money in their account. And then every day would go by, Michael. Every day would go by. We'd wait and listen. Hey, what about Canadians with disabilities? Well, later on. Then eventually they kind of blended it in. Oh, well, we got your back. We've got your back. Now, that was in 2000. So in 2021 came, the LICO formula came out, and it said that the amount that to the poverty line, the minimum. I mean, now Canadians with disabilities have more expenses than just that poverty line, right?
I know, right?
So is at $2,200 a month, and that was in 2021. So now we're in 2023. So if it went from 2,000 to 22, you're probably looking at 26 now, right?
Yeah,
Maybe.
well, in Ontario, someone asked AI, what, based on the cost of housing and the cost of living in the province of Ontario, what would the government benefit be realistically? And the AI came up with $3,500.
Oh wow!
Because their
Oh, yeah.
rent is very similar to BC rent, right? You're not gonna find a one-bedroom place for under 1,500 if you're lucky.
Well,
Under
it's $2,700 in Vancouver for one bedroom,
2,000?
2,700 for one bedroom in
Oh.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
Crazy, eh?
No,
I
and
mean,
that's like,
well,
it's absurd, but I think for the clawback, it's a really hard one for them to defend. It's like, what right do you have to claw that back? What are you preventing me from doing? From
Right.
crawling up to the poverty line? Because I'm not there. I'm
Yeah.
almost there, and I feel like you're coming and you're hitting my feet, knocking me down.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard one justification for it. If they're worried about people who only get provincial benefit, not getting enough, and so the optics aren't fair, well then raise their bloody benefit up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know?
And
But
their
don't
rationale
claw anyone
for it.
down. You don't make
Yeah.
it an equal playing field by digging down deeper.
Mhm.
That's not how it works. You bring
Yeah.
everyone up.
Their rationale for it. I mean, I've actually tried to do a human rights complaint like 4 times now, and their rationale for it is, well, as long as we treat everybody the same way, like badly, and claw everything back for everybody else, like not just people with disabilities, but also like the elderly and everybody else on assistance, it's fair. It's a fair system. So we're
Yeah.
only doing what's fair. Like
Yeah, see, that has to be challenged in
it's a fair discrimination as long as we're doing it to everybody, right? And it's
I
just like,
almost
wow.
think I almost think it's time that we started using the courts. And one of the things
Yeah.
I've thought is a possible case where you could challenge this clawback by charging the provincial government with theft under the criminal code. Because the criminal code in Canada is very unique. Our law is very unique. Private citizens can lay charges. You don't have to be a cop or a crown prosecutor to lay a charge. Anyone can go in front of a judge, or in this case, usually it's the justice of the peace, and swear an information, it's called, say, on this day at this place, I believe this crime got taken place. And if there's evidence there that's reasonable, the judge has to commit that person to a trial. So I don't see why we can't, as a group, organize some people. I'm sure amongst us, there's many with legal experience, get together and pursue that, because I think that's the one thing that they can't deny is that the law says to them, wait a minute, it is theft. That you have there's no legal right for you to take this. And they say equality. There's no equality amongst a class.
Not if you're
Equal by definition. Disabled is disabled.
yeah. That's
If
been
you
my problem.
pay-
That's been my problem too. Is that they changed the definition of a pension. A
Yeah.
pension is supposed to be a protected income, and
Yeah.
as soon as you're
So
on
if
assistance,
you
it's
fight
like
them on their
gone.
if you fight them on their field, they keep moving the goalposts. That's been my experience throughout my entire time battling with the government as an advocate for the poor. So
Yeah.
instead of fighting on their field, let's move the game over onto our field, which is the rule of law, and go at them with the criminal code. Because I'm sorry, the federal government that is sending me money, that money is being intercepted illegally, not
Yeah.
the province's right to take it.
Well, especially it's like EI. The person pays into EI. So now the ministry says, oh, are you eligible for EI? Well, I need you to go and prove that you're eligible. So you go there and then say you're on sick benefits. Now you go there because now you lost your job. You're injured, right? So you go there,
Yeah.
send you on EI to see why are you here? Well, because the ministry sent me here. Meanwhile, you're in pain and suffering. You got to get down there. Bring the form back. That happened to me. I went all the way down there. I was just excruciating pain. T3. I had to take T3 to get rid of the pain temporarily. And I'm just like, so out of it. Just like, whoa. I get there. Can I help you? Yeah, I don't know. The ministry sent me here. Why? Because I need to prove that I'm eligible or ineligible for EI. Well, no, you're not, because you've injured yourself on your job. You can't be there. And also now you're on WCB too. So now we got another issue going on here. So marked it here, no, not eligible.
I think
Ministry, and they say, oh, okay. Well, we need to claw that off because your WCB off you. But now we need you to go back again to see if you're eligible for sick benefits. So
And then we can claw that off.
Yeah.
they're just making jobs. They're just making work because
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows you how absurd it is. It's like Kafkaesque. And I think that the best thing to do that would solve all this problem is everyone in Canada gets a guaranteed annual income. All those bureaucracies are gone. No more finger pointing to everyone.
Yep.
All those bureaucracies are gone, and they'll all be happy because most of them that I've dealt with hate their jobs. I can't understand. You're working in social service, services, they hate public. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
You should have gotten into warehousing or something. Because
Yeah.
if you don't like dealing with the public, you shouldn't be working in social services. So everyone gets a guaranteed annual income. Once you start making $50,000, then they can start taxing it back. But let's pull everyone out of poverty, because I'm sorry, it's absurd that we live in a country with such wealth. And the people who lived here the longest are the poorest, the First Nation. And they should be actually the richest because they've been here the longest. And it's like, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. So we have to start doing things for ourselves, because, you know, how'd Bill C-22 go? Geez, that was a cliffhanger, eh?
Oh, wasn't it? Wasn't it? Oh my gosh.
I had to sew my pockets and my pants bigger to hold all the extra money they're giving us.
Oh my gosh. I mean, wow. Now it goes back to Senate, and now let's
that's
go
just-
and end something that could have easily been passed yesterday.
Well, and they blew it because they showed us the serve. They could do it in a second, sign it, and it's done the next day.
Well, I was
There's
watching
no
a video
excuse for this
earlier
delay.
in the Senate, Michael. I was watching a video, and they said, yeah, amend this, amend that. Okay, now they're going to come back tomorrow, or maybe either tomorrow or next week, Tuesday, Monday, or Tuesday.
Yeah.
Going to say, vote on it. Okay, done. It could have been done yesterday. Oh my gosh. You know, and yes, I agree with you about the GLBI, or like a universal income. Like, all the services are there right now. You got child tax credits, you got GST, you got, I mean, a whole bunch of them, right? I mean, I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're all there. Put it all into one. Boom. All the
Well,
bureaucracy
It just
going.
makes it so much more efficient.
In my case, like you know, again, I always try to use government's own terms when I'm writing emails, and like they're clawing back my survivor's pension, right? So I always say, like, the survivor's pension that they're clawing back for me is a targeted support income, right? Like they always say, talk about targeted supports. Well, that's what a survivor's pension is. It's a targeted,
Specifically for, right.
it's a targeted support, and yet you're clawing it back. And trust me, I've crunched the numbers, and for the last 10 years, they've stolen $65,000 from me in 10 years. They've clawed back $65,000 from me. And, you know, like you're saying, it's theft, right? I mean, that's my money. The federal government says that I deserve it. The federal government says I deserve it. They should be the higher government, right? That the higher government should have precedence. But no, the provincial government turns around and says, well, we don't care if the federal government says you deserve it. We don't think you do. So we're going to claw it off
Well,
you.
I wonder what happens if we write a letter to the federal government, say to CPP, and say, dear federal government, as of this day forward, please only send my benefit to, and give them your address.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
stop any communication, and say, I no longer authorize communication between the province of British Columbia and CPP.
Yeah.
And what's the worst that's going to happen? BC cuts you off?
Well, I mean, I did put a call into the somebody in the federal government. I said, like, what's the deal here, right? And they said, well, it's nothing to do with us. It's completely 100% the province.
Yeah.
Because they said we're giving you the money, and it's true that they're giving me
but
the money.
They could easily say to the province, stop clawing back, and the province would follow them because they're subservient to the federal government.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and here's another good twist on about clawbacks. You know, like, I'm glad we were talking about PWD and subsidized housing versus market housing. Now imagine all the clawbacks. It's like a clawback in a sense. It's like saying, well, hey, you can have a subsidized, you can't. You choose to have market rent. Well, maybe they didn't choose to. That's the housing. They want more money. So is it that you go into subsidized housing because you want more money to live? So that's like a clawback. So if you backdated all the time that PWD are in market housing, where they should have been given that same criteria, same privilege, or maybe not privilege, but the entitlement of having reduced housing costs, man, that would be a huge cost over time. How many years a person's lived in market housing and paying high market rent because they can't get into subsidized housing because there's a long waiting list. Now here's the thing, Mike. It was one of my landlords, agents. Okay, we were talking about housing recently, and so I threw it. I said, "What about rent geared income? What is your view?" She goes, PWD, unfortunately, in market housing, they don't get it because you've got the shelter portion, If they got rid of that, now you would be technically eligible only if the government now made another, say, made up a name called PWD, I don't know, housing or something, because seniors have SAFERS, single mothers, single fathers have the RAP program, which is the residential assistance program. PWD now need to have that designation for that. She said if that was in place, now you could actually have subsidized housing where you live right now, but because you get 370, you get the shelter, you don't qualify, but people in subsidized housing qualify. She said there's something, she waited 12 years, she was in subsidized housing herself before many years ago, 12 years. And I said, well, I'm reading like 10 years. She goes, Brent, honestly, it's more than 10 years. It's more than 10 years. I'm like, oh my God. She goes, yeah, like governments around Canada, they don't like talking about the waiting list. You ask people in Ontario how long the waiting list is.
Well, they're such weasels here. BC Housing wouldn't even admit. I said, how many people are on the list? Oh, they didn't want to tell me. So I'm going to do an FOI because I want to find out. But so I said, where am I on the list? And they said, oh, it doesn't work that way. I said, so why do I have to phone you every 6 months for the last 8 years now and reattach myself to this non-existent list? Yeah. Like, how many people are working that office just to keep moving Jello in a circle? It's like, it's ridiculous.
It just feels like a black hole over there. Like it was a long time ago where I put myself on the BC Housing list too.
Registry, they call it.
Registry, yeah. And I never heard a peep. I never heard one peep from them. Like you don't even know if they got your application. They don't follow up anything. It's just like you just send it in and it's just like a black hole.
It's tossed to the side after a period of time, right? They just lose the information.
I think it's like the joke, right? There's a big open in basket and it goes down out a hole into the sewer. It's because it just doesn't, it's like, we don't need a list. We don't need more bureaucracy. We need housing.
Yeah.
So Little Mountain, why haven't we got housing? Why haven't they pulled that back from the crooks that it was sold to? And let's get some housing.
That was terrible when that was sold.
And it's outrageous. And it's just, it continues and continues. And I mean, this building, like I found, 8 units in it, they're empty. And, they wouldn't tell me. I did some investigating. I looked at all the names on the front board. A lot of seniors still have phones, right? Landline phones. So I went home and I phoned them and made a few connections. Met this wonderful older woman, 86 years old. We'd have tea together. She told me everything. She's been there for 23 years. You know what else has been there for 23 years? The bloody carpet in her apartment.
Oh, wow.
And I talked to my friends who run buildings professionally. They said, no, 5 years usually is the max. That's if we've had light use. If it's heavy use, they could replace carpets in 3 years. 23 years. And guess what happened? Because it's 23 years old, the carpet developed these big wrinkles in it. And the elderly woman falls and has her hip replaced because she fell. So you're telling me BC Housing, you saved how much money? No. You just moved the cost for that hip replacement off your books and put it into BC Healthcare, where in fact you're responsible for that. And it's like, how dare they? It's a beautiful building built by the feds, paid for by the feds in 1974. And it's so strong that it had a lethal fire in it and no one had to move out in the suites around the fire suite. That's unheard of.
Yeah, Michael, like what's your view about, like, I know I mentioned like rent guarantee income, like, so anyone PWD across British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all the provinces, if they were to have a universal, say by feds, maybe the feds, I don't know, I don't even, they can't even figure out how to get C-22 going, Bill C-22, but say they were to get a national program going and saying, okay, nobody can pay more than 30% of their income to rent.
That's exactly what it should be, 30%, because that's what the banks go on if you can afford a mortgage. And I think it's bizarre that so many people can afford way more rent than their banks qualified for a mortgage. Like, oh, sorry, you don't qualify, you can't buy the house, but you can pay double that amount to rent it.
Yeah, because there are places right now, like I'll get your view on it, but there's places right now, some corporate landlords, okay, they're playing a little game. And so before I moved out to a couple of years ago, before I moved to where I am now, I applied around because I wanted to get into a little bit of a cheaper housing, but I mean, it was still manageable, it was still reachable, it was still high. And I'll get into that point in a sec, but it was, the landlord basically said, sorry, you have to be making $4,500 a month between two of you. I'm like, the government's not going to raise or give us another over $500 increase. Well, actually, it'd be more than that, but my boss would probably do it for 4,000 if I talk to my boss. Even $4,000. I mean, what are you saying? Well, it has to be 4,500, but I'll do it for four. For a place that's $1,500 or $1,410 at that time. It's just, well, actually, it was $1,425. But Sonia saw it for $1,410. Fine, I'll give it to you for $1,410. But you need to be making $4,500 a month between the two of you. So I talked to a friend of mine, Michael, and he works in healthcare. He's actually going to be a nurse, right? He was bringing home $3,000 take home, $3,000 and a few dollars. He couldn't even afford to rent there. They wouldn't even rent to him. And I said to him, okay, there's a problem. He goes, yeah, there's a serious problem. So I went around. I thought maybe it was an isolated situation. I started seeing a theme. 8 places, 8 corporate landlords. And they said, I had no problem. I said, I pay my rent. My current landlord said, yeah, like they pay their rent all the time. Like I never have a problem with them. I mean, I talk to them, hi, how's it going? Boom, pay their rent. And they never judged us, and they were a corporate landlord. So there's I guess depending on the landlord itself, some of them will say, hey, as long as you can pay your rent, you show that you can pay it with a notice of assessment from the ministry. So this is the point I'm getting here.
Yeah, and I think terminology is important.
Yeah,
terminology is really important. And one thing I want to say is that landlord is a common term, but I don't believe any of these assholes are lords, because if they were lords, they wouldn't have to rent places out. They'd be rich enough. So let's call them what they are. They're land peasants, and we're paying for their land. So the idea of a lord is it kind of gives this authenticity to the person who owns the property. When you know what, 90% of them don't actually own it. The banks do. So it's just a different way of financing property that the banks are using the poor to finance the majority of the property, because the majority of people in Canada rent, right? 60% of Canadians are renters.
It's a huge amount. So
we get treated the worst. We don't get a homeowner grant every year for our $5 million home. Did you get your homeowner grant? No. It's just, so it's really important, I think. But what you're saying there is a perfect example of it's a crisis of affordability throughout the spectrum. And that's why, why are there no BC ferries running half the time? No crew. Why is there no crew? No housing. And I don't quite think people understand that. It's all connected. And you've commoditized housing. People say, oh, Airbnb. And I think Airbnb are awful because they're commercial use of residential property. Tax the property at a commercial rate, then we can talk about it. But Airbnb aren't the biggest cause. The biggest cause is the federal government removing themselves from the housing paradigm in the 70s. And since that day, the fingers are pointing everywhere. That's not the issue. The issue is we don't have enough affordable housing, and the government has to get behind and build it. Pipelines aren't the priority. Dams aren't the priority. The people of Canada need to be sheltered. And how many people died last winter in Canada? Unhoused, underhoused. It's unacceptable. And how many people are dying from poison drug supply? That's unacceptable. But when people are down and out, they're the easiest people for the government to push around.
Yep.
Once they push too much, if they push you too far, we can be the most difficult to deal with. Because like I said, can you imagine them trying to clear out the lawn of the Legislative Assembly with 400 disabled people there with all their devices?
Or more.
More. Their supporters, everyone, and just keep and say, we're moving here. This is our house. This is the only house we can now afford, because you've stolen all our money from clawbacks. You've set rates so ridiculously low, nothing's available. So we're taking over the Legislative Assembly. It's our house. That's all we've got left.
At the most basic level too, even if we take a really wide lens, the thing that pisses me off is, we said this the last show, is that income support for PWD, it used to be a pension, right? And now the whole thing is just charity driven, right? It's like, we're giving you this income support. It's charity basically, right? And the thing that bugs me is basically the government looks at everybody on PWD and doesn't view us as taxpayers. They think they're just giving us the money and that we're somehow flushing it away and they'll never see the money again. Where in reality, we're actually pumping the money into the economy.
You know what? I
Everybody else is.
I haven't met any people on benefit who are hiding their money offshore, making it
Yeah,
rendering it
exactly.
useless for the economy. Everyone I know on benefit spends almost every penny they bloody well get every month in their community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
And they're not paying for Saudi airline leases. They're not paying for copious amounts of jet fuel and hotels in the Riviera. They're paying for food and shelter and used clothing.
Mhm.
And so it's like, it's a myth. It's the best way to support a community is to give the poor the means to survive
Mhm.
at or above the poverty line. That's what we're missing. The poverty line isn't something you strive to get to. It's something that you're protected from falling below. And
Exactly.
they've
It's supposed to be a
forgotten that.
mental,
This visual that we have, oh, we're trying to reach up to the poverty line. No, no, no.
No.
The government is responsible to move the poverty line below and to make sure people don't hit it.
fall below it. And when people are at like 40 to 50% below it, we got a huge
We'll never dig our way out. And that's why it's so ridiculous that, and they're showing us these little carrots, this little bag of change and C22.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. So I'm ready to camp. When are we going to start? What's our date? July 15th?
There you
When are we
go.
going to the lawn of the Legislative Assembly? We have to keep this conversation going because I'm committed to it. It's like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I've got nothing to lose. I mean, jail is affordable housing, really.
You know, it's so frustrating too, Michael, is when the pandemic came out, they gave BC, and in BC they gave them a $300 supplement, right? COVID supplement.
Yeah.
And you know, let's see how it works out every 3 months. Let's see how this is working. Well, then it was working. It actually improved people's lives.
Yeah.
They could buy more PPE. They could buy sanitizer. They could go and buy some fresh fruit, vegetables. They could buy maybe put another better accommodation, which that's what we did. We got a better accommodation. We bought fresh fruit, vegetables, and unfortunately, corporate landlord had something else in mind.
They wanted it.
Our whole unit, we lost the whole floor. The whole floor basically got pushed out. Actually, 2 floors. Really, it started with 1 floor, 2
Because they were
floors.
going to they were going to renovate. I mean, paint the place.
No, a brand new place. We saw it getting built, and the manager and her son were doing hardcore drugs inside. Everyone got pissed off, and well, we couldn't even open up our windows. Manager pretended they didn't know what was going on and stopped texting me at certain times. So I kept on texting because it's like, well, if there's a problem, let me know. I talked to the residential tenancy branch, and they were very concerned, extremely. Like, I would not leave the narrative alone, Michael. I kept pushing the government on it, and we don't know what to do. So anyway, it came down to a point where I think we pissed them off so bad. They said, okay, the owner says, you got a choice now. Take this other unit, which was 2 floors down, okay? But it was around a problem. We didn't know at the time. Now I know going forward. It was dark and gloomy. It was no sunshine, and we didn't have access to that unit in the first place when we moved in, or pay a higher price of another unit in the front. I had to take the higher price one. So now it put us in a very bad situation. I got an earful from the government. Why would you put yourself into a bad situation? I go, I have no choice, because now they phoned me saying, hey, I noticed that your rent was this. Now your rent is now going to be $260 more than what you were paying before. Do you understand that you're going to put yourself into a very precarious situation? I go, I'm sorry. If I leave here, I'm going to be homeless. So what do you want me to do? Well, I'm sure there's another place that you could find to rent. No, landlords are saying, call me on the 1st of the month. We'll let you know. Well, the landlords where I was renting is that they kind of cornered you in, like saying, okay, we'll waive off a liquid damages clause only if you take another unit. I ended up having to move from there anyway, because the government took away the $300, but gave back only $175 of it. And the CTV, Global News, CBC all interviewed me and Sonia and said, what would happen if the government took this away? What would happen right here at this place? And they had the camera pointed to the building, right? I said, we would lose it. I'd have to move. Well, fast
Oh,
forward,
oh.
we moved.
Oh, I'm getting a message from Ottawa. 1 second. Yeah. I found the money. You guys. Hold it 1 sec.
Show me the money.
Show me the
$88
money.
billion. Instead of wasting it on fighter planes, we're going to give it to the disabled of Canada to get them into proper housing. One moment. It's been confirmed. It's been passed by the Senate. It's a new bill. It's called C-100, and it's to get everyone above the poverty line. And all they had to do was they canceled the jets. Thank goodness.
And they just got royal assent on that
It,
one.
it, it just happens so quick. It shows you when they want, right? I think that's amazing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Brent, but I tell you, good news comes from the most surprising places.
Yeah, and the part that really irritated me though was when I went to the ministry, and they showed on there. They said this is amount you're supposed to be showing the landlords going forward, and I said, well, what do you mean? This is the amount with the $300 on it. And so I showed my manager. She's like, oh, okay, so that's what you're getting. I go, well, no, it's a temporary one. But the ministry said, no, this is the amount going forward, indefinite. Like that's the new amount. Meanwhile, I guess the ministry's offices must have been told by the government, yeah, like this is amount, it's not going to get taken away. Like this is a permanent amount. Well, guess what? It wasn't. So they misled.
They weaseled it down a bit, right? First they cut it down to 150 or something, and then they moved it up to 155, or just kind of, and then it ghosted. It was like an old girlfriend.
Yeah.
Pink unicorns.
And that was Horgan. That was Horgan's last stand. Horgan Arrow.
Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden, February 28th of this year, we're going to announce a $125 increase. But yay, you know what, Michael? We got to wait until July 19th, 5 months later. But hey, you can get it 5 months later, though. People are suffering now, but you can wait longer. Why not, right? I mean, pittance, right? As Sonia would say,
at this point,
breadcrumbs.
The fact that there's even anyone to talk to in those offices amazes me, because they're not doing anything. It's the most wasteful job I can imagine. I don't see what a human is involved in for a computer to issue a check to my bank. You don't need the bureaucracy of social services. So I've had much service from them. I've had hostility from them. I've had disparaging comments from them. But it's like, this isn't, it's not acceptable. I think that everyone has the right to dignity and the right to respect, and that includes the right to live at or above the poverty line. And it's a shame and a disgrace on this country and the governing bodies of this country that we're not. And that we're sitting here today in 2023 talking about people trying to survive on under $16,000 a year.
And that'll be my next topic, is about autonomy, about relationships.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
a good one, right? So what other benefit from the government is restricted or eliminated because of your relationship status?
Yeah.
Right? So if I have a romantic partner, unless they're, I figured it out. The way we can avoid this, they won't claw back your check if your romantic partner is a paid worker. So that's it. I'm just going to claim that my romantic partner is a sex trade worker, and it's a financial relationship. I just pay them. Then they can't question it, I guess.
Wow.
It's absurd, right? That you've got a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and that their income all of a sudden gets grouped into yours, even though you don't claim same income tax. You're not a married couple. You're just living, cohabitating.
Yeah.
And it's like, how dare? But then you think, this is the ministry that goes and steals children from your family. Like, they're just so nosy. I think I bet you none of them know how to spell the word privacy. None.
Yeah, well, that's what I don't like either. It's like the invasion of privacy, right? It was like always having to fill out the forms
on people's doors. I remember one of my neighbors when I was growing up in my neighborhood. They'd have social workers going, and they were knocking on one of my neighbor's doors. She goes, I'm sorry, I'm changing. I hear her in the door. Like I was delivering newspaper. I'm changing Johnny's diapers right now. You need to come to the door now. I can hear this. Like disrespectful, like condescending.
I need to verify you.
Yeah, and she says, I'm sorry, I'm changing. She goes, if you don't open the door now, you won't be receiving your check. I need you to
Yeah, I
sign.
know, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
yeah.
I said right to the lady, I'm delivering paper now. I didn't know what was going on. I said, excuse me. She goes, can I help you with something? I go, I need to drop off a newspaper, but I need to put a little, kind of a remittance form here to collect my, for the subscription. But I'll do that tomorrow. She goes, oh, well, you're glad you can wait till tomorrow because actually I'm here. Actually, this person has to answer the door. Open the door now. I go, stop being disrespectful. That's what I said. She goes, excuse me. I go, I heard. I said they're changing Johnny's diaper unless you want poo-poo diapers. My mom got so mad. She goes, oh, because she was helping me deliver.
Well, good for
I
you for
don't.
standing up as a kid, right? That's important.
Yeah, yeah. And she says, oh, Brett, you don't know who she is. I go, I don't care who she is. And
And
the
it's
lady,
interesting that her reaction wasn't one of being ashamed or being caught out. It was she became more aggressive and more assertive, right? And that's the whole mentality of that ministry is that
diaper.
how dare you challenge us? I find empty housing and BC housing, they phone the police.
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
it's ridiculous. It's like, come on.
Well, the lady opened the door and she handed the diaper. She goes, there you go. Here's Johnny's diaper. She goes, ah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I was just like, I remember that. It always stuck in my mind, but it always remembered me about people being disrespectful, right? And I thought, really, like the lady at just a few minutes, like, is it gonna kill you? I mean, it's killing disabled people on how they're basically treating them with the rates they are. I mean, my God, aren't you paid? I mean, my gosh, like
the one that worries me a lot about this cohabitation is for women, especially if you're in an abusive relationship and you get out of that relationship and you get benefit, right? If you don't do exactly what the bully pulpit of ministry says, you risk losing your transitional housing. There's a great article on Tyee. I'm sort of stealing it from them. Again, tyee.ca. TYEE. It was talking about how sometimes they'll be forced to go back and live with the perpetrator of the violence against them because they get their funding cut off.
Right.
And it's like, what an absolute horrendous miscarriage of everything.
Abusive relationships should not be.
It's just it's like they're almost pimps for these predators.
Yeah.
BC Minister of Social Services become a pimp for predators, forcing women, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman. Men can be abused too. Unfortunately, it's mostly women that are abused in our society, but I've seen it happen to both sexes. But the fact that they're forced back, and that's all that. It's no one's business what happens in your bedroom, as long as it's consensual. Like, I just don't care. And the benefit you get to live on has nothing to do with your relationship. Like, I don't care. Say you start dating a millionaire and they buy you a new car. Who cares?
Yeah, God forbid, right? I mean,
right? But the way BC Housing would see it was, you're off your benefit now. It's like, what? Because someone tried to help me out of a hole? A new car won't get you out of a hole.
Yeah, they want you to sell all your assets. They sell them all off. Sell all your.
The system's set up right. I don't know. Like, when I came on to disability at first, they made me, while I was waiting for the decision, they make you go on social assistance.
Yeah.
Which is the way to clean you out because you can't have any assets.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sell it all off.
My 1964 Dodge van that I paid $500 for, I got rid of that. And they said, "Oh, you can keep your car." I said, "Well, it's too late now because you won't find a replacement for that for $500."
Yeah.
But it's just crazy, right? And so they get you down to nothing.
Yeah. How much change you got in your pocket?
That's what they would ask you. They would ask, how much change you have? I thought that's so insulting too.
I got 1 penny and I got a nickel here. Anything else in your wallet? I go, how come you have 2 bank cards? Well, I got one to pay my rent and I got the other one to pay bills. But I don't think it'd be enough to pay bills, but hey.
And when was the last time you were in jail?
Yeah.
Every month. When's the last time you were in jail? Declare that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes or no.
Yes or no.
Yeah. And that's not presumptive, right?
No.
Why
par for the course.
When's the last time you're in jail? Why don't they just say date of recent release?
Yeah.
But
when's the last time? Every day.
I think the good thing is that we're
can't
at
leave.
the point now, our baby's grown up, and that's the internet. The beginning, it was rough. It was really rough. The internet was overwhelmed and overrun, and now that it's mellowing down. It doesn't seem like a lot because they're trying to tell us it's all crazy and you have to censor it. But actually, here we are, three reasonable people communicating over an amazing system. We couldn't do this 15 years ago.
No.
So we're doing this now. We're getting organized and we're talking, we're having these discussions, and this is so essential because what we're doing here is we're building community. And that's what disability people have had a disadvantage is because of our mobility issues. A lot of us, mobility, mental, whatever the issue is, we've been restricted in our ability to commingle and to communicate. So I'm like, I feel like a child at Christmas with this gift that we have now that here we are. So let's go forward with this and let's really, really concentrate on building a community. So I don't know, like in BC, it's sort of all these different little groups. Do you guys know of a central BC group for disabled people with disabilities that's sort of that's already there that doesn't have to be rebuilt? Or
there is actually the BC Disability Caucus page. It's a Facebook page.
Yeah, see, I can't do Facebook.
Run by Paul Gilbert. And he is, I mean, that page is not bad. I mean, it's pretty good.
I would like, you know, what I would really like to see is get a group together that gets financing from various levels of the government and have a website. So we're not reliant on social media sites because they're just so corrupted. There's, you know, it'd be much better to go to the BC disabled person's website as opposed to Facebook and all that software and shit that Facebook runs. All that stuff's free software you can get now. So, you know, you can set up a pretty rudimentary system, especially I know in our community, there's some good computer geeks. I think there might be one in the room right now, actually.
Maybe I should have a ticker going across the bottom. A little ticker that's saying, send in your political donations to us now.
Yeah. Yeah. Right there.
Running across.
Click subscribe.
Donation.
So I'm optimistic, right? It's not all doom and gloom. Like the party behind me, that was great. But let's, I really want to look forward to building some hope, building some dignity, and having a hell of a lot of fun. Because I'm here to live to have fun. Like, I'm sorry, I can't doom and gloom it anymore. It doesn't work. I don't want 88 billion on war planes. I want them on fun. I want them on people living, eating well, happy, healthy relationships, loving children, loving the idea that we have communities that are strong and we support everything. So a single mom with kids gets as much support as the millionaire up the street because it's a whole community. And that's a good way to look forward, I think.
But if we had fighter planes, we could sing Highway to the Danger Zone.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. I mean,
I feel the need.
There's Jeff Lake, and he has I'll try and get the information for you too.
He's the federal MP for the NDP.
No, Jeff is actually he actually lives out in Duncan.
Okay.
And, he's set up a page for the Disability Action of Canada. So he's intertwined kind of with us too, right? I've had him come on the show before. Yeah. He's working on a campaign to across the country to bring the awareness up and hold the politicians to account, and no less. He says no less. Like it has to be at, or he calls it at or above that poverty line that we were talking about, right? Can't be less.
No, I think that as soon as people are below that line, there should be some mechanism that kicks in that prevents that.
Yeah, exactly. And there should be penalties. Like I think it should be all retroactive back too. I mean, that's what I want to demand them too. Is when they come out with this, or even if they do that C-22, like, but even if they did, I want to put pressure. I want them retroacting back to the promised date that they promised it. Like, which is probably
not going to do anything retroactive unless it's their paycheck.
Yeah,
I want them to start clawing back their own pensions.
Yeah.
There we are. I think we should take a vote on that one.
If you're going to claw back my pension, I want to claw back John Horgan's.
Like, is Bill Blair getting a pension from the Toronto Police because he was a chief there? Yes, he is. And he's also getting a federal government salary. Like, wow. We got to claw one of those back.
Yeah, you can't have both. Can't have double dipping.
No, I think that's the problem, is that the whole system got so corrupted. All the political parties in Canada are legal corporations. That's the truth. The Liberal Party of Canada is a legal corporation that works to elect members of parliament that represent the Liberal Party's position. But there's no accountability in the Liberal Party of Canada because it's a corporation. It's got a board of directors and it's got a CEO. We don't ever see that as the electorate. We're showing these people that we can vote for, but they're not. They're just the spokesface of the corporation behind them.
They're kind of like little puppets, right?
So exactly, and when we have our Minister of Energy was lobbied 6,500 times last year. Do the math. That's quite a lot. That's like 20 calls a day, right? That's a lot. So
It's like little puppets going, I'll tell you if we applaud.
what we have to do is we have to remove the power of the corporations from our political system. That's really simple. That's to give every Canadian a budget of $100. In every election, you get to decide which parties you're going to support with that $100. You can give $50 to the freaks, and you can give $20 to the idiots, and you can give, whatever. You get to choose.
Yeah.
But that's all the money they're allowed to use. Then there's no more corporate influence. Because I'm sorry, when GM lays $1 million down through 50 different donations through 76 different employees, that's corporate capture.
Yeah.
And that's so clearly what's happened here. The way that the government bends over backwards to facilitate $30 billion now for that bloody pipeline that was supposed to cost $5 billion. It's like good money after bad. When will they stop? And the warplanes, $88 billion there. So when will they stop? We have the money, we have the resources. We could, and so I don't.
Keep flushing it
I've
off.
seen the result. Just south of us, I drove last couple months ago. I was going for a little bit of a road trip, and I got as far as Eugene. I had to turn around. I was crying so much I couldn't drive. The I-5 corridor is lined with unhoused people living on the highway side of the noise fences.
Oh, okay.
And it's the saddest thing. I used to drive down that route all the time.
Yeah.
It's the saddest thing. And you think this is a nation that's spending $800 billion on warring every year to protect this?
It's terrible. It's so sad. And it doesn't.
As far as I'm concerned, war is for losers. The only war that actually is good is the war on poverty.
Yep.
And if you support any other war, I don't want anything to do with you. But I will be a warrior against poverty because I think that's so essential.
Ended. And there's no need for poverty in Canada.
No, and the funny thing is, the majority of the world is poor.
Yeah.
So it's like we've already got the majority. It's just now we have to organize. So I look forward to getting.
Let's sing war.
War.
What is it good for?
Absolutely
Absolutely nothing.
We are the world. We are.
No, I like that. War. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Sing it again.
Look at it again, Sam.
Anyway, we're up against the clock now. We're up to 3 o'clock. So
Michael,
It's been very enjoyable, gentlemen.
yeah, I want to get you back on, and I usually tell the guests that we'll do segment 1, 2, 3, right? So we'll spread it out over time, and definitely I'll be getting Neil to reach out, and we'll
Well,
schedule.
we got to organize the new campsite we're going to open up
That's
on the
right.
legislative
Yeah.
lawn.
bring your guitar. Bring your
Exactly.
guitar, and we'll do.
Do some karaoke there, and
We'll have a nice campfire. We'll have it all. We'll have
roast
it all.
marshmallows.
and oh yeah,
Make s'mores.
We'll have showers and tents, and we'll have facilities set up for people who are mobile challenged. We'll do it all. We'll just do it right.
yeah, exactly. We'll have a barbecue, and and it'd be all sponsored by one of our sponsors. That'll come forward, and marshmallow.
The beautiful thing is, that's our house. People keep forgetting.
Yeah, people's house.
That is our house. That's the only place in British Columbia that everyone has peace of.
Yep.
I don't care the guy on the street in downtown Eastside or the guy living in Shaughnessy. They own an equal piece of that house. It's one vote. And that's where the power is. And if the power is ignoring us, let's go to where the power is. Because I
Absolutely.
guarantee you they won't be ignoring us for very long.
That's a good way to end the show.
That's a good way to a good way to end the first segment. And over to you, Neil. And then
Yeah, it was just a really enjoyable conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fabulous having you join us today, Michael. And and advocacy doesn't take a break. It doesn't take summer breaks. It doesn't end. And having fierce advocates joining us on the show and lived experience. People have lived experience. They come on and join us and join the call for eradication of poverty. Like, there's no reducing poverty, and it really just bugs me about that word reduce poverty. No, let's eliminate poverty. Poverty doesn't even need to be there. I don't even know why that came up that name in the first place.
I always think they
the
should.
poverty line below us.
I always think they should change the word reduction to just recycle poverty or something, because that's what they're doing.
Poverty,
You know,
poverty.
If you want to be honest about it, change it to
Perpetuate
recycle.
poverty.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and get rid of that archaic 375 too. Just give everybody one check. Let's give it a modernized name. Let's just call it Beautiful BC Benefits. There we go.
Citizen benefit.
Yeah, Beautiful Citizens Benefits.
There you go.
Yeah, great.
Okay, guys.
So thank you so much, Michael. You stay. We're going to be ending the show, but stay on just for a few minutes, and then yeah. But thank you everyone for tuning in. But before we sign off, please subscribe to Neil's YouTube channel. Like, click, subscribe,
share, subscribe.
Yeah, all of that stuff. I would say, and
show us the money.
Yeah, show us the money. So if you want to be a sponsor to our show, and basically just follow Neil, and just if you're on Twitter, send him a direct message, or you can actually send him a comment right on to YouTube under the comment section.
I'm still trying to get Bublé on the show.
Oh yes.
He can be our corporate sponsor.
Oh
So
yeah.
If you're listening, Michael Bublé, we're open for business.
Yeah, and I have a special surprise for my next segment on Breaking with Brent, or in Coffee Time with Brent. Stay tuned on that one, because it'll be an eye opener. You already know what that was going to be, but it's going to be fun times. But stay tuned for all the upcoming events and all the shows. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.